West Coast capitulate at the hands of the Pies. The underrated Dogs defence continues to shine, and the fixture upheaval that saw us start the day with 5 games and end with 3. All that and more to come from the round so far, brought to you by AAMI, plus the latest on how the round 20 fixture looks for Sunday. But Kane Corns, we've got to start at the MCG. A horror day for West Coast, their 4th loss this year by more than 50 points.
So these are some of the closing moments with Bianco. He's a good young player. They've got a couple of good young players, which we like. But what a day it was for Collingwood. But what a shocking day it was for that man, their premiership captain, the first Eagle to play 300 games, and what his teammates served up on the MCG today. They really should be ashamed of themselves, and we don't say that lightly, because we're going to show you some clips that the Eagles players will have to sit through, and it's really going to eat away at them, and it should.
Let's get into them right now. This is the West Coast's lowest three-quarter time score in 17 years, and it was way too easy for this undermanned Collingwood team.
The corridor was open all day. So the one thing, the most basic thing you are taught when you are defending the ground is to protect the corridor. Force the team that you're playing against, go wide, go slow, give your opposition, give your defence and your teammates time to roll back and set up safely behind the ball. Collingwood went through the middle of the ground all day. West Coast just perplexing decisions. Waterman there, they just were so off right from the start. And then they turned it over and bang. Look, I love the way Collingwood attacks it. There's definitely been a change of attitude with their ball movement. But how easy was this? Collingwood went at 83% disposal efficiency. This is how it is. And watch Thomas here. So we'll highlight him. How many Eagles players could have manned him up? This is their defensive 50. Yo's right there. Doesn't even acknowledge that there's a Collingwood player in a dangerous position. That took a long time for an easy uncontested mark. We could have showed that repeatedly. They missed tackle after tackle. They only like 32 for the game. It was a pathetic performance, and they've had some real pathetic performances this year. They lost to Geelong early on by 96. They lost to Sydney by 97. This was probably the worst of the lot when you factor in what they were playing for.
167 marks today for Collingwood, Kane. That's usually what West Coast are putting on oppositions. That was the 9th most ever recorded in a single game for Collingwood, and the most this year for any club. That was pretty incredible. Sorry, the 9th most by any team in history. 167 marks for the Pies. Oscar Allen for the Eagles, Kane, he's had a lacklustre second half of the year, and he's probably their brightest young player, 22 years or younger. A bit of emphasis is going to come on him.
Yeah, he kicked 16 goals from his first 6 games for the year, including 5 against this very side, Collingwood. Now, part of his form struggles are not his fault. He's been chucked all over the place. He's plugged holes, he's played back, he's played in the ruck of all places. But remember, we were talking about $1 million player at the start of the season, Oscar Allen. He looked anything but. His second efforts are not there. He's not influencing his games. He's shirking contests like he did there with a much smaller opponent inside bottom. Look at the pre-finals form and then the drop-off. So this is the biggest drop-off, I think, from any significant player in the competition this year. Most of the blame lays with the club for the way that they've managed him and derailed his season by forcing him to plug holes. Some of it lies with him. But when you see the young forwards like Max King and Larkey ripping the competition apart, this was what Oscar Allen was doing, and he looks like a shell of himself out on the MCG today with 8 touches and no impact on the game.
Especially considering when Kennedy and Darling are still there and getting a lot of the focus, he's usually been able to float through and bob up and have an impact. What does this mean now for Adam Simpson? 2024 his contract has been extended to. And while we're talking of coaches, does Robert Harvey all of a sudden come into this coaching race? I know it's a pretty easy assertion to make off the back of one game, but to this point, he hasn't been factored into this Collingwood coaching race.
He hasn't done himself any harm for getting another job. I don't think it'll be at Collingwood. I think the history and the record of caretaker coaches getting the job hasn't put him in a favourable light through no fault of his own. Your first point's interesting on Adam Simpson. Look, I don't think his job's under threat, and you mentioned the contract security he's got. But what has this group got in store for it? Because they got no draft picks. They got no one coming through. Jared Brander, I think it's their last first-round draft pick back in 2017. They sold the farm for Tim Kelly. Their salary cap must be so tight. I really thought it was the last roll of the dice for a premiership with this group. And players that played today, Mitch, are as good as any top end in the competition. McGovern, Kelly, Darling, Nick Nat, Yo, Redden, Gaff, Sheed, Hearn. The list goes on. For whatever reason, they are not delivering on their talent. So I just think it's going to be a really rocky road for the Eagles as they start to age and injury continues to be a factor like it already has this season.
And as you say, no good young kids coming through, giving up. They gave a stack for Tim Kelly. That's 2 first-round picks that would have usually been 20, 21 years of age right now coming through the door. Ballarat today, Kane, the Bulldogs, they just did what they needed to do. An 8-goal win over Adelaide, maintain top spot. And their defence, it continues to stand up, and they've got a new face down there who did the job on Taylor Walker today.
Yeah, Josh Shecky took 3 intercept marks in the first 10 minutes of the game and kept Taylor Walker to probably his quietest game this year, bar the one that he finished the game early with injury. Just 5 touches for Tex. Previous career low is 4. So it was really good. One-on-one there, you see he competed. Look, I don't know how he's going to go in a final, but to come up against Tex and play with the confidence to play in front of you, seeing it on a couple of occasions here, to look reasonable in the one-on-one contest like that. He read the conditions well. He gets outpointed here, but look, there's 1 minute to go in the game and, you know, he'd want to be better in that contest. But look, he's a nice stopgap for them until Alex Keith comes back. And I don't think he'll hold his spot for finals, but it's a nice luxury to have. And for the second week in a row, he's been pretty good.
The Crows managed 8 goals for the game. And as we've discussed a lot this year, if it's not Tex, who is it standing up alongside him? Take us through these 4 names because they've been underwhelming for much of the year.
Who wants the spot, Mitch? And it's 2 spots because Tex has probably got 1 year left. We know he's signed, or maybe 1 after that. So there's 2 spots there. No one wants it. So Phil Thorpe's going to be a really good player. And it's amazing that he wasn't playing today. And it's amazing the club haven't just played him right throughout a development year. It's a real wasted opportunity to play the likes of Himmelberg in front of him. I don't think Himmelberg is good enough. I know Billy Frampton isn't good enough, and even the club have given up on playing him forward. They've moved him back. I'm still on the fence about Darcy Fogarty, but it's starting to get a bit concerning. He can look amazing, can't he, like he did at stages today, but you look at the stat sheet and he's had 7 touches. He averages 8 disposals for his career. So typical Darcy Fogarty game today, 4th season of footy where you really should be hitting your straps, but if he doesn't lead out and take the mark, he doesn't have anything else. So Crows may have at least 1, probably 2 forward line positions that they need to fill, and I'm not sure who they are, and I'm not sure they're on their list currently.
All right, big watch in terms of the off-season for the Crows. Now, you've been crying out for more love for defenders, so our Saturday star this week is Bailey Dale. Kane, the Dogs had Caleb Daniel, an All-Australian last year. Is Bailey Dale in that conversation this time around?
Well, I absolutely think he is. And if you're looking at who's the most improved player in the competition, I think it's this man. So he's at 31, 84% efficiency again. He's had 9 intercepts. There's not a weakness in his game. And I had a look at his career numbers. So he's played a career high 18 games this year. His previous best was 16 in 2017. So he's been interrupted with injury. That was the case last year. Then he lost his place in the Western Bulldogs side towards the back end of last year. Now he's staring down the barrel of a halfback or wing position in the All-Australian team. So you're looking year on year and a massive leap in improvement and performance. Well, Bailey Dale is probably the most improved player in the comp.
And credit must go to the Dogs for moving a middle-of-the-range forward, half-forward to elite halfback, as we've seen this season. Now, the conditions today at Ballarat, have a look at some of these shots. Mars Stadium in Ballarat, tough going for the players.
Yeah, if you didn't see any of the game, it was. And the players, apart from these few examples we're showing, actually dealt with it pretty well. The Western Bulldogs were pretty efficient and really smart with their ball use into the breeze. They definitely used their hands more and really ran and used their legs and punched the ball inside 50. So I thought the Western Bulldogs, clearly, as the result would suggest, handled the conditions pretty well, but not an easy one for the players today. One of those ones where you wake up and think, got to go play footy in this.
Well, you mentioned the players. How about the fans? This is our AAMI clangers. Fans were locked out of the ground, but this didn't stop a few rocking up. Mitch Hannon provides the AAMI clanger. These are the fans on the outside. They're tooting. They're riding every kick with the players. There's the first one. Love the socks. And the next one, they get the chance to celebrate.
I'm pretty happy with this, aren't they? So, it's the old school sort of country footy rock up and sit in your car and get to watch an AFL game. So that man loves it. Well done to him. Not so for the interchange steward down in Tassie today. A bit of a thankless job at the best of times, but he's been cleaned up by Mark Blixarves. Gets up, dusted himself off, and good courage there. Max Gawn had some fun, Mitch.
We had an incredible day today. So Melbourne left Victoria to Queensland. Just as they were about to land, they learned of Queensland's lockdown. But Tom McDonald didn't see any of it. He had to fly back, having slept the whole way up to Queensland. So they've flown up and back in a day without playing a single game. We'll have more on that in just a moment. Back to last night, Kane, the Blues. They're all of a sudden a sniff for the finals, and St Kilda really, really poor in this one, allowing some easy shots for Carlton, and their 5th loss by more than 30 points this year for St Kilda.
Well, it was a good response for David Teague and Carlton. They needed to after last week's absolute disaster. But I just thought their ball users we're going to see here, and they had a real determination to get that ball back inside the corridor. We'll get to St Kilda in a moment, but Carlton only had 44 inside 50s, and they scored 22 times, 18-4, which is the best record in the history of the club. So 15 of the 18 goals came from the centre corridor for the Blues. Now, part of that is great execution with their goal kicking, but most of it is where they took their marks inside 50 and their desire to get the ball through the middle of the ground. It was terrific. So let's focus on the flip side. St Kilda, how they could continue to serve this up and be one of the most inconsistent and frustrating teams this year is remarkable. So they've got an issue with the players getting the ball and the lack of damage that those players have done. They had the top 4 possession winners on the ground. So Dunstan, Jones, Crouch and Steele combined for 122 disposals. Now, if your 4 best midfielders get that much of the footy, you shouldn't lose. But Carlton just let them have the footy because they're not damaging at all. They really lack a weapon through that midfield, and defensively, as you've pointed out, they were so poor.
And the Blues came to fight, and they did. They had stack more tackles, 52 for the Blues at half-time. We had to show the best highlight of the game, and it came through Charlie Curnow, more than 700 days out of the game. Kane, this is great to see.
I'm really glad they played him. Well, I didn't think there was much to lose with this. And look, he didn't tear it apart, as you can imagine, but you can just see a taste of the talent and what we've been missing out on, as you mentioned, how long it's been since he played. Look at the power in that. He's a serious player. I'm telling you, he can seriously play. Let's see now if the Blues can back this up. There was a lot of jovial nature. They sort of over the top celebrated, I thought, on that performance. And you can see with it, you can hear when there's no crowd, the players sort of really enjoying themselves. That's fine. But can you back it up next week? And then can you do it the week after and the week after that? Because Carlton get very happy with themselves on the back of one reasonable performance. Let's see if they can string some consistency and, more importantly, some effort together for their coach who's under the pump.
The game came on the same day that Alistair Clarkson officially walked from his post for the remainder of 2021. David Teague was asked post-game. Of course, he has a contract for 2022. Asked about how he would feel if the club was to approach Alistair Clarkson about next year.
I'd understand the morning too. He's been a great coach for a long time, but I'm going to back myself. I think, like I said, we've got good people here, and I think the direction that we're going and what we're doing here. So in terms of, do I think that I'm the right person? If that's what you're asking, I think I'm the right person to keep going forward with this footy club.
Big 3 weeks for David Teague, Kane. Gold Coast, Port Adelaide and GWS to finish it.
As I said, if you're serious, you win all 3. What's the reason? You saw what they did on Friday night. What's the reason they can't? The only reason is they get comfortable and they don't bring the same effort and intensity and preparation. And got to be said, they did it with a lot of players missing, and De Koning getting injured as well was probably the last player you would want. So credit to Silvani and the role that he played. But Carlton need to back it up next week. And look, I'd be surprised if Carlton hadn't already picked up the phone some weeks ago and sounded out Alistair Clarkson. Yeah,
Alistair Clarkson said he's unlikely to coach next year, but he already has changed his mind twice this year, so those things remain to be seen. Hobart today, Geelong, bit of a grind. North Melbourne got within 2 goals in the last term, but the Cats got the chocolates, their 5th straight win, and we wanted to pinpoint one play that summed up the day. The Cats pretty methodical with ball in hand.
Yeah, that's the word for it. So they've taken 136 marks. They only turned the footy over 54 times, which is about 11 under their average for the year. So there was a real lack of intensity, I thought, about this game. And Geelong just sort of were able to kick into gear when they needed to. The margin was pretty close for the majority of the game, but you never felt like Geelong were in any danger. I do want to shout out to North Melbourne with how they've improved their defence. Absolutely, the first sort of up into the bye rounds, they were a really leaky defence and they got broken open the longer the game went on. They're a really sound, solid defensive group now, which is credit to what David Noble has done. And they defended a whole heap of inside 50s tonight. So they conceded 60 inside 50s, but only gave up 62 points. So they were rock solid, and Ben Mackay did a great job on Tom Hawkins once again.
Yeah, only 1 goal for Tom Hawkins, both games he's played against the Roos this year. We wanted to look at the Guthrie brothers for the Cats. Kane, Zach, he's only played a handful of games this year, but he was a late inclusion. And his brother Cam continues to go from strength to strength.
It's the best game I've seen Zach play, the career best game, which is a credit to him, because as you said, he wasn't selected in the team, but he was just so strong in the air. I haven't sort of seen that from him so far throughout his career. He had 28 disposals, 13 marks and 11 intercepts. And look, his brother's a star. We know that. Cam Guthrie, best and fairest in a side that won the grand final last year in All-Australian. Unrestricted free agent. So let's watch this with real interest. We're up to round 21 for Geelong. They head in there and their reigning best and fairest winner, that man, who is their second best midfielder now behind Patrick Dangerfield, is out of contract. And there's a squeeze on because they paid Cameron a whole heap of money. Dangerfield's not cheap. Hawkins isn't either. It's Tom Stewart and Joel Selwood and others. How they fit him in, whichever way, he's in for a massive pay rise and he deserves every cent.
He's about to turn 29. I think he deserves a 3 or 4 year deal, considering he's younger than Dangerfield and Duncan, and both of those guys are signed until 2024. So a watch on the length that Cam Guthrie gets at the Cats. Here's the ladder as it sits midway through round 20. As we can see, Geelong maintain the same wins as the Western Bulldogs. Kane and the Eagles are just hanging on there in 7th.
Yeah, it would be quite amazing if the Eagles hang on to a top 8 spot after some of the games they've served up this year. But who wants it? I mean, does Richmond want it? Do the Bombers? They disappointed themselves last week. Can Carlton win their last 3 and make a run? Fremantle out. But it's amazing to think that West Coast are still in 7th with some of the performances that they've put up this year.
And Collingwood, pretty much that win today guarantees they will avoid the wooden spoon, which is a good result for them. Here's the rest of the round as it sits. So 5 games on Sunday, originally scheduled to be 3, but 2 games scheduled today on Saturday have been moved. The first of those is Gold Coast Melbourne, just after midday at Marvel Stadium. Hawthorn Brisbane stays in the same slot. The Lions have been granted access to get into Tasmania despite the lockdown in Queensland. And then Essendon Sydney Kane, that was meant to be tonight, Saturday night. It's going to be played on Sunday Arvo at the G.
Super Sunday, Mitch. This is what's happening. And look at that Port Adelaide game. Amazing. So I've got my track and field spikes out. I'm going to watch the track and field at the Olympics, which is just the greatest show on the planet. And I'm going to watch 5 AFL games. I'm going to have my phone, my computer, 2 TV screens set up, and we are ready to roll. It's going to be one of the great sporting days.
Can't wait. The Power today, they watched everyone else scramble around the country. Melbourne went up to Queensland and back without playing. 4 teams came down and the Power got to sit in Melbourne and watch it all unfold. Kane, keep those spikes handy. You might be able to run over from Adelaide to Melbourne next week if the border's lifted.
Well, I need something to cheer me up because the great player Travis Boak breaks the record tomorrow. So shout out to you, Boakey. I sleep tonight as the equal games record holder at Port Adelaide. I'll wake up on Monday morning and it's gone.
All right, well, hopefully we can cheer you up next week here on the round so far. I'll see you then, Kane.
See you, Mitch.